Well, the holiday season is one of those times where it can feel a little bit harder to step forward in our recovery. There's a lot of things that come up, a lot of emotions, a lot of people that we're around, and it can feel like, man, what, where do we go here? But the incredible thing is that Jesus gives us the strength to step forward in our recovery no matter what season we're in. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what does that look like practically for one of our sisters in recovery.
Recovery can be hard, but it's worth it. There is hope knowing we can find healing one step at a time with Jesus and healthy community. Whether you're struggling with a hurt or a hang-up or a habit, you're not alone. During this podcast, we share real stories, practical tools, and powerful truths that inspire you to keep moving forward. No matter where you are on your journey, there's hope ahead. So stick with us as we walk this path together through Celebrate Recovery.
Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Hope in Recovery, a Fellowship Celebrate Recovery podcast where we share life change stories, recovery conversations to keep us moving down the road in our recovery so that we can find lasting healing in Christ as we live with Him and with others in healthy community. And so we're so glad to have this conversation today as we're going into this holiday season. And I'm really, really excited for the guest that we have, one of my absolute favorite people in the world. But before we jump, before we jump into this conversation, I do just want to say, hey, if you're getting something out of this podcast and these conversations, please, would you like and subscribe to the channel on YouTube? Follow us on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Give us a 5-star rating. It helps to get the word out so that more people can find the healing and hope that we found. And so, super excited for today. Let me go ahead and introduce myself. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I struggle with anxiety and depression, sexual addiction, and grief. And my name is Andy. Hey, and I get the privilege of being able to serve as the ministry leader for Celebrate Recovery at Fellowship Fayetteville. And today, like I said a second ago, one of my favorite people in the world here with us. Would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I celebrate recovery over sexual addiction, and I still struggle with lust, body image issues, and codependency, and my name is Julia.
Hey, Julia. Yep, super excited. Got my wonderful wife on here today to talk a little bit about what does it look like to lean into this this season of the holidays. And as I was thinking about that, man, Julia, one of the things that I see in you is that you really do try to do your best to step into whatever season you have, making sure that you're trying to stay connected with yourself and with God and with others. And so as we lean into this holiday season, just wanted to talk a little bit about, hey, what does it look like for you to practically lean into the holiday seasons? And so I think a good place to start is, Julia, what does this holiday season, as we go into the end of November and into Christmas season, what does that bring up for you in your heart?
Yeah, I think it brings up a lot of different things. I think I grew up loving the holidays, and so, Thanksgiving and Christmas, prefer Christmas food to Thanksgiving food, but that's beside the point. So there's a lot of really good memories I have, so I think there's definitely excitement. But I think within my own heart, probably the biggest thing that I feel, especially just this year too, is just expectations. There's expectations that come with the holidays. And I think a lot of times I feel like they are unvoiced expectations. And sometimes I can assume that other people have expectations of me or of us and our family, and what we're expected to do. And that maybe they don't have those expectations, or maybe they do have expectations and I feel oftentimes like I'm letting people down or different stuff. So I think that I do feel the weight and the pressure personally of just what are the expectations of all of my loved ones during the holidays, and am I letting them down? And I don't think I always do a good job of pressing into that and just asking and making sure that we're good, like my family's good, my extended family, your extended family. And so I think that I have felt that a lot since we've gotten married, since we've had kids. And I don't know that that I've done a good job of pressing into that, but I think I do feel that weight every time. And especially with even just with our daughter, her birthday is like a week after Thanksgiving every year. And so there's that too. And now she has expectations for what she wants for her birthday. And I was even reflecting on that this past week as I was planning. Like, I don't want to let her down and anyone else down. And it's actually been good for me in this moment to get this out and process that. Like, I think that has been like on my heart, and I haven't really stopped to think about it. But it's still there, very real.
That's so good. Even just listening to you process that. First off, just the recognition that, hey, like sometimes we actually enjoy the holiday season. It's not a bad thing to enjoy it. I remember growing up, Christmas was a really good thing, and like there are really good memories associated with the holidays. I think about, Thanksgiving at my grandma's house, and what that looked like for all of us, all of the Petrie family, to get together and celebrate that. But it's interesting you mentioned, and I bet it's a pretty common thing of people feeling the shifting of expectations as you enter in new seasons of life with loved ones, with kids, with extended family, and the weight of expectations is a really big thing. And you tease that out a little bit of, am I letting people down? Could you bring us in a little bit more into that? What do those expectations look like to you? Are those mostly things that you put on yourself, or do you feel like they're things that are put on you?
I think I read people's minds in not a good way. Like I think that I feel like there are two really big personalities in our family, one on your side, one on my side, that do have a lot of expectations of family just in general, but then it gets especially true that there's expectations of family during the holidays. And so I think that I worry that I am letting them down by wanting to do our own thing, or just have it, things are crazy this year, things just whatever's going on. And I don't know that I do a good job of stepping into that and just clearing the air and making sure, like, are we good? And maybe it wouldn't go well if I did that, but I don't know because I haven't really done it. And so I think that it is true just in different situations with different people's families that it's not always safe to have those conversations. But I think that it's worth, because I'm just thinking in my own heart, like if I was to voice to your sister-in-law, our sister-in-law, Stephanie, like, just, I hope that I'm not letting you down. What are your expectations? I'm really worried that I am. And that conveys, I'm thinking about you and I love you and I care about what you want. Even if I can't meet those expectations, it still communicates I'm thinking about it, and I don't want you to be disappointed. And it gives, so even if I can't meet someone's expectations, I think that it is helpful. Like, I need to be better about voicing that so that they feel heard and understood, even if they do have expectations that I can't meet because of whatever we have going on in our family.
Yeah. That's so good. Like hearing you say, like, sometimes I feel like I'm an expert at reading people's minds. And so some of these expectations are not necessarily expectations that have been put on us from others. They are implied expectations. And it's interesting just thinking about families of origin and stuff. And I know I love my family of origin. Like I love so much my family of origin. But one of the things that I noticed, as Julia, as we got married, was realizing how many expectations were real but unvoiced, and how many expectations I put on myself that weren't ever voiced and weren't ever true. And but I love what you're saying of like, man, could we risk, and again, sometimes it's not safe to lean into certain people in there, but like, could we risk, what does it look like to lean into that space and go, hey, I want to, before we even get to this thing, I just want to set, hey, I want you to know I love you. I'm here for you. I can't wait to be able to do what we can do over this holiday season. But hey, I just want you to know this is what I feel like you might be thinking. Is that what's going on? What do you expect of me? And so just a just an honest, curious conversation. If you feel like there's pain points, and I love that. Well, hey, what do boundaries look like? And as you look into those expectations and stuff.
Yeah. I think boundaries look different for everyone. Do you mean personally or just in general with people?
Hey, let's go just in general, and then if you think of some personal things that pop up in that, then throw that in there. But just give us some general boundary things that you've learned over your recovery.
Yeah, I just think about when I hear boundaries, I go to like codependency, and I'm like, okay, here's a codependency binder, and what do I know about codependency? And so I think in thinking about boundaries, I think that having poor boundaries is saying yes to things that would come at a very big inconvenience to, to use I and me statements to me personally, just to make someone else happy. Um,
Yeah. Hey, real quick, I want to, because that was really big what you just said there. So I want to make sure I don't miss that. So you were saying like boundaries come into play. Like I know I'm not putting good boundaries in place when I am doing things at great expense to myself and my family to make somebody else happy. Uh, and I think with that is not just to make somebody else happy, but also to avoid conflict in that as well. Because it's not, what we're not saying is, hey, if anything is a giant inconvenience, don't do it. It's what's the motivation behind that, and are we willing to do that for us?
yeah, because I think there is I think it also reveals a bit of an insecurity within a relationship, whatever relationship that is, to feel like you can't put your heart out there and have the other person respond. And so, like, I think about you and I, Andy, we have a fairly secure relationship in most areas. And so it doesn't feel scary to me to say, I would rather just stay home and have turkey with us, or just whatever it is, or whatever our expectations are for our holidays. I know that you're going to respond well and say, "Oh my gosh, yeah, that's what I want for you." Like I want that for you. Or if you have different expectations, then you'll say, "I love that. Here's what I am thinking," and we can have that conversation. But I think if there is a fear there, to hide our hearts, it reveals a bit that there is an insecure relationship with that person. And I think that when there's an insecure relationship, it does develop some codependency, and then it does create some boundaries issues. And that can just get really dicey. And so all that to say, I think that having good boundaries is important, because it protects ourselves. But I think developing good boundaries outside the moment and then voicing those, and we all know, right? Boundaries are around ourselves. They're not around other people. We put boundaries around ourselves. And so voicing those boundaries, but then being willing, the hardest part of boundaries is being willing to take the action step to walk away or to leave or to remove yourself from a situation, or to, if you do this or say this to me or to my kids, I'm going to leave, or I'm going to step away, or, that's the hardest part of boundaries. Because it is a relational rupture. And it's hard and it's painful sometimes.
So, Julia, you're touching on something really important right here, and I want to make sure that we flesh it out even more fully, because that idea of developing boundaries, making sure that you know what those are before you walk into situations, and boundaries that you're willing to actually uphold, are all a part of that. And there's a couple other things that I think are kind of playing into boundaries and how we lean into it. But we are right at our break. And so we're going to go ahead and go to a break real quick. And when we come back, we'll continue this conversation in the lens of how do we stay moving forward and stay in a healthy, secure place in our recovery as we enter into this holiday season. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Hope in Recovery, a Fellowship Celebrate Recovery podcast that shares life-change stories and recovery topics, all centered around the CR principles based on the Beatitudes in Matthew chapter 5. In the Beatitudes, Jesus gives us incredible tools to help us face our hurts and hang-ups, those lies we believe about ourselves, God, and others, and even our circumstances. He helps us to ultimately tackle those defenses and protections we call habits that cause chaos in our relationship with God and others. Our prayer is that you find hope and healing for your mental, spiritual, emotional, and relational journey as you listen. Now join Rodney Holmstrom for another episode filled with hope and encouragement for all of us on the road to recovery.
All right, we are back from our break talking with Julia about just, hey, what does it look like to lean into this holiday season and to stay in a healthy place in our recovery? And we talked a little bit about expectations, whether they were spoken or unspoken. Are they things that are put upon me? Are they things that I typically put on myself? Am I just reading people's minds? And then what does it look like to lean into boundaries in that place and to actually understand what boundaries I need to put in place? And I think I want to back up just a second, because I think boundaries are also really influenced, especially when we talk about getting around family. They're influenced by major triggers in our recovery. And so what are some examples of triggers that you've found in your life that you just know that you're kind of going to expect, that can maybe knock you a little off center during this holiday season, that as you've worked your recovery, you're like, oh, I have a feeling that as we're entering into the season, I'll see this coming?
Yeah. Do you mean triggers that would require boundaries, or even just almost like I know this person's going to say this or talk about this?
Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, because I think there are some triggers that we just know, okay, if I'm going to step into hanging out with my family, I know that, my great aunt is going to say this whenever I walk in the door, and that's just a part of who she is. And am I okay with that? Am I choosing to step into this? And then there are things where it's like, okay, if this happens, this is how I am going to respond. Yeah. So let's talk both.
Talk both. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think for me that has been something that has been super helpful in my own walk, especially walking into the holidays, is just knowing certain expectations of family. Like, I know that they're gonna say these things, or we'll talk about this, and I think what it's helpful to think about those things and pick them apart, on kind of organize that within each person, just within my own brain, because it keeps me from expecting certain behaviors from people that they just wouldn't have. It keeps me from wanting certain things more than they do, and it helps me to accept this world as it is, not as I would have it, as we often say in recovery. And so, and that's what Jesus did. He took the world as it is, and he was just amazing at navigating this broken world. And so for me to be able to step in and do that same thing is very Christ-like. It's how Jesus walked this earth and how he dealt with different things. And so it also just helps my own heart to not get so offended or get upset or get angry and rob my peace. Just to go into it knowing, yeah, my mom is going to have certain expectations or think certain things, or she might start talking about this, or my dad maybe will talk about something else. It keeps me just willing to go with the flow. And I do have sometimes personal boundaries where if there's a conversation that starts about a certain topic that I don't want to be in, I will just leave the room, and no one knows that's a boundary that I have in that room except for maybe Andy. But except for you. And so that's just certain kind of smaller boundaries that just helps me keep the peace in my own brain and body, and it doesn't let people rob my peace. And so that's one type of
Yeah,
boundary.
that's so good. You know, it is what I hear you saying too is also like we need to give it some forethought. You know, I remember for me early on in my recovery, uh, and what I'm so grateful is that as I've worked my recovery, this has really resolved a lot. But there was a lot of bitterness that I was carrying towards certain members of my family, and I knew though that it's like okay, I value my family enough, and we have a good enough relationship that I don't want to I don't want to miss the holidays with my family. But I know that there is this person that I have this hang up with that I need to be mindful of how much I'm interacting with them. And it was never anything that I articulated to my family, but it was one of those things that I processed beforehand. I brought my accountability team into it to say, hey, I'm going to see this person at grandma's house for Thanksgiving. Hey, would you guys pray for me? Because I recognize that there's something in my heart towards them. And I don't want to do anything that would, blow anything up. And would you give me the courage to, if this comes up, if this topic comes up, that I could have the wherewithal to step out of the room, just like you were saying there. And being able to identify, like in early on in recovery, a lot of times we'll talk about this idea of who are the people, who are the places, who are the things, the playmates, playgrounds, and playthings that we have in our life that put our head in a bad headspace or maybe tempt us to do rough things, things that we don't want to keep doing. And so, like a big example for me is like, there are a lot of people in my family that drink. And I know that if I go to a family function, I'm going to see somebody with alcohol there. And I think that's true for a lot of folks. And for me, early on in my recovery, I had to make the boundary of, hey, one, I need to understand that this is something that's going to happen. I'm going to see people in that. And I am making the decision before I'm ever even in that position that I will not drink because somebody else is drinking. Also, that if things get crazy and people are overindulging, I am going to leave. I'm going to remove myself from that situation. And that was something that I had to make. And that's actually a boundary that we have made whenever we're with our families is like, hey, we're going to choose to step away, and we're not going to do, if that ever happens, and thankfully it hasn't, but if that ever happens, we're not going to make a big deal. We're not going to be super offended in it. We're just going to go, okay, hey, love you all. This was so great. We're gonna head out. And so being able to do that in a winsome way with our family, but making sure that we acknowledge and identify beforehand, hey, what are the people, places, and things that might put me in a rough headspace?
Yeah, I love that because I think a lot of times when we identify those things, the holidays are full of all of those at times, those people, those substances, those whatever. And so it is almost like, okay, I'm putting myself in this situation. And I want to say too, I was just thinking about this as you were talking too, of just one, giving ourselves permission. We don't have to go to those events or those people's houses or whatever. It's okay to say know to not go if you don't think that it's going to be a good situation for you, or it will trigger you, or some people are new to recovery and they're still getting their sobriety under them or their feet under them. It's okay to not go. Don't let the obligation going in. But two, like, I think even Andy, as we're talking about those different situations and different things for different people that we're going to see, I think what's so hard too is that there's such a spectrum of family dynamics and holidays and just different people that are going to be there. I mean, we have a spectrum of, sometimes it's just a little bit awkward to see this person because they're kind of an awkward person, all the way to like that's kind of on the lighter side of things. But there's also people who are dealing with some stepping into the same rooms as their abusers. And a lot of, whether that's physical or verbal or sexual abuse, stepping back into those rooms can be really heavy. And I know that one of our counselor friends has told us that trauma has less to do with events that happened to us and more to do with the people who are supposed to show up for us didn't. And I think what's so important too as we step back into these situations, especially if it is something that is really heavy, is stepping back into the room of someone who has abused you in the past, or something that is like that. It's so important to have our support team around us digitally. We have, so many of us have just access to being able to text our sponsor, text our accountability group, or get on the phone and just ask for prayer. Just know that there's people around us that are going to be there for us this time. And that's a lot of times the big difference of stepping into a family situation in the past when we had no one, and stepping into it now that we've started our recovery, is that we've got people around us. And if we have people who are going to show up for us, a lot of times it makes these really difficult situations so much more bearable, because we do have the people around us that love us and that can be there to say, I'm sorry and this isn't okay and you deserve better, and to can speak the truth to a lot of times the pain and the lies that are sometimes audibly being spoken to us at certain family events. And so I wanted to voice that too, of just there's so many different family dynamics, and it's so hard to step into that.
Well, and that's so, and even in you saying that, yeah, there are many of us that are listening to this right now that have endured some type of verbal, emotional, sexual abuse in our life. And oftentimes, some of those perpetrators are the people that are closest to us in our life. And if you have permission that you don't have to be around those people, like you don't have to do that. Especially if you're early on and it's so super raw in there, and it always puts you in a bad headspace. Like, don't feel like you have to do that. That's not a necessity. So you have permission. But one of the things that you were talking about is just the importance of staying connected. I think one of the things that our triggers tend to do to us, especially around this holiday time, and we didn't even talk about the grief and the emotional fallout of missed expectations and all of that, because that's a really big part of this. So many of us are heading to family gatherings where there's an empty seat at the table. Where maybe there's been some really heavy stuff that have happened. There's grief, there's loss, it's not just
anniversaries of people
anniversaries
who've passed at the holiday,
yeah, and so there's so much of that going on to be mindful of too. But like our triggers they try to have a disconnecting effect, I know, on me, and the way that they try to disconnect me from myself, disconnect me from God, and disconnect me from others. I can allow them to disconnect me from those things. But leaning into our sources of connection and peace and strength, it allows us to have the strength to step into the next moment. One of the things I love so much about this recovery process is that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And it's taken one step at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. And nobody expects us to be at the finish line. All that is required of us is to simply take the next right step that's in front of us. And so Julia, what does it look like for you to stay connected to yourself, to God, and others during this time?
Yeah, that's so funny because I think one thing that we forget so often is to stay connected to ourselves. I think a lot of us have grown up disassociating, especially in situations like this. And so that's something that I have found so valuable is just learning how to connect inward to myself, just to be aware of how is my body responding. I heard a counselor say one time that she was talking to someone and they said, I'm really anxious. I can just tell I'm anxious. And she said, how do you know you're anxious? What in your body tells you that you're anxious? And I just thought, oh my gosh, I've never thought about that. Yeah, we know when we're anxious. Something is telling us that we're anxious, and how often we dissociate from our body, which is communicating things. We have chemical reactions all the time to everything, happiness, sadness, all the different stuff. And so I think that's such an important starting place is being aware, like I'm getting really agitated at this person and my heart rate is starting to spike, and that, like, I need to calm down and I need to step away. And so if we can be aware of ourselves, that is huge. And then that tells us, okay, I'm upset, I'm doing this, I need to step away. Maybe now I need to reach out to someone and stay connected, not only to myself, but to other people as well. And so we can't do that if we don't know that we're having that response. And so I think that's so important. And just, even like you said, just being aware ahead of time, going into it, having a plan, knowing who you're going to text, knowing who are safe people. A lot of times just stepping out of a room and sending a text, I feel a lot better, even if they haven't even responded yet. Sometimes it's just helpful for someone to be like, yeah, you're not crazy. That was super rude that they said that to you, or just whatever. You're like, I knew I wasn't crazy. And so yeah, I think it is kind of going into it with a plan, knowing I'm going to see these things, these people are going to act a certain way. What am I going to do and who am I going to reach out to is huge, because then that action plan is just in an instantaneous. You know exactly what to do. And we're not going to do it perfect. If you're new to recovery, maybe this is going to be the first time you've ever done something like this, and you will blow up and get angry and yell and then go text someone. It's fine. Like, you're learning, and then next family event, you'll know more. I went from 0 to 100. How can I avoid that? And so I think it's not about perfection. It's, if we do have those disruptions, it's a learning opportunity. Now we know something new that we didn't before. And so I know that that's happened to me a ton, is just, I learn every time I step into a new family situation, something new about how I can react next time. So
Yeah, that's so good, Julia. Just the importance of kindness and curiosity towards ourself as we lean into these hard places, and giving ourselves permission that, hey, it's hard, but you know what? We can do hard things. Recovery has taught us and is teaching us that change is possible. The way that we responded before doesn't have to be the way that we respond now. And we know that we can learn from the mistakes of the past to lean into the hope that God is working in our heart in the present and in the future. Well, hey, we are, man, it's so funny how quick this time goes, but we're towards the end of this conversation here. And so, Julia, I just want to throw it to you for one last thing. Hey, 30, 45 seconds, somebody's listening to this right now. They're nervous and anxious about stepping into this holiday season. How would you encourage them?
yeah, I would just say, yeah, it's about progress, not perfection. Give yourself grace, get a plan going in ahead of time. And if you get in it and the plan goes out the window for a second, just not shaming yourself, giving yourself that grace. You can always reset and go back in, and find your safe people and let them know ahead of time. I'm worried about this specific thing happening, or these specific people saying these things, or this situation happening. I'm going to text you if this happens. It's helpful to have other people know the situation and just be in it with you, and to just be there for you during the whole time.
Yeah, that's so good, Julia. Well, hey, y'all, thank you so much for spending time with us. Julia, thank you for jumping on here and having this conversation around how How do we step well into this holiday season? And I do just want to say this. If you need a community, if you're listening to this and you're anxious about the holiday season, it's bringing up a lot for you, we want you to know you're not alone and you don't have to carry that on your own. Jesus himself tells us in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." The burdens that we carry that maybe we're putting upon ourselves, or maybe the anxiousness that's coming on in this season, we weren't designed to carry that alone. And Jesus longs to step into that place with us. And here's the incredible thing. He's also given us a community of brothers and sisters that want to carry that load with us, to hold our arms up as we walk through this hard season together. And in doing so, we can actually keep moving forward in our recovery. And so if you need a safe place of people, every single Friday night at Fellowship Rogers Celebrate Recovery and Fellowship Fayetteville Celebrate Recovery at 7 o'clock every Friday night, we've got a safe place for you to find the healing, support, and hope in Jesus Christ to take new steps forward, even as we're walking into old familiar places that feel hard and scary. And we can do this together. No matter what we're facing, we can walk through this holiday season well with joy and knowing that we're not alone in it. God bless y'all. We'll see you next time.